There's been some news about Google being a monopoly. Apparently, someone is going after Google, saying that they are abusing their monopolistic powers with search, and that there might be a breakup of Google happening. Now, will that actually happen and we see Google get broken up? I don't think so. Probably not, but there's a potential that it could happen. And this is the case going on right now. Obviously, this thing breaking up Google's hard to do, which I would agree with. It seems like, what do you break them up into? And the things that they're going after them for is the search engine part of Google, which is their like biggest business. That's where Google makes all of their money. So I don't know what the breakup would be. It'll probably end up being something else, but this is what's going on right now. Saying here that a federal judge is considering breaking up Google after a landmark ruling last week that the tech giant has illegally abused its search monopoly, and that this judge, in the case last week, first brought by the Department of Justice in 2020, held that Google's massive $26 billion payments to competitors violate the antitrust laws and inhibit consumers' choice and innovation. So Google, obviously, like when you have an iPhone, when you use your iPhone in Safari and search stuff, it searches through Google, and the reason it does is because Google gives Apple a part of the rev share of the ad revenue that it brings in for those searches. So Apple makes billions of dollars by just saying Google is the default search engine on iOS. And that means that they don't have to go out and make their own search engine. So they say that by Google doing this, it is stifling innovation, because had they not have done this, Apple would have made their own search engine maybe, and then there'd be competition and there'd be alternatives, and it'd be beneficial to the consumer to be able to have that happen. But the question is, what happens with this ruling that they say Google is a monopoly? What is going to happen from this, right? So like this says here, courts got to choose a remedy. Could mean that the new rules require Google to share data or change practices, or even here, like Bloomberg and New York Times reported, a court or a split of the company, which would be kind of crazy if Google got broken up. It could mean a bunch of different things as well, just because Google is a massive company, right? Google has the search engine part, YouTube. It has Android it works on, even though I think that's open source, as their phone line, their Pixels and stuff. And it has things like Gmail and those things operating. So if Google was to be broken up and say, divesting something like Gmail has to become its own thing, or these different services, then it might be actually more harmful to consumers, because right now Gmail is free because Google just subsidizes it and says, we'll run Gmail just because why not? And make some money. They don't really make money on Gmail, but they can subsidize it because they make so much money with the search engines part. So breaking up Google might actually not be beneficial to like the consumers, because we would probably start have to pay for Gmail, where now it's a free service because Google subsidizes it. Maybe it becomes $10 a month in a subscription service, which would not be beneficial to people, right? I wouldn't want to start paying $10 a month to have a Gmail account. I like it being free. I think everyone does. But if we look back, even some of the antitrust stuff they had before that they're comparing this to, there was one against Microsoft to break them up 2 decades ago. But the company filed an appeal and eventually was successful. Microsoft didn't get broken up. There was something with AT&T as well, but that was government stuff and like regulated government protected monopoly at the time. So I kind of weird how this stuff works. Like some things are saying you can be a monopoly, that's all right, but this one you can't be because the government's not involved. But it's just an insane thing going on. Google at the being determined that they are a monopoly is kind of insane. I think that's pretty obvious. I think Google is definitely the number one search engine, right? But with Google, them being a monopoly might just come down to them actually being the best option, right? Even if you gave people an option to, when you buy an iPhone, to set up the search engine, like when you set up your phone and they set up the search engine and say, do you want to use Google, Bing, Yahoo, all these different options, the vast majority of people would probably still pick Google because it's just the best search engine. So I don't think that there's like this massive thing like search engines have gotten terrible because Google is the number one thing, or because people were forced to use Google, I think people would have gravitated towards them anyways. But either way, allowing people to go decide to do other things and make other search engines the default on devices, sure, why not? If you don't want to use Google, then you should be able to not use Google. But as for what will happen because of this ruling, probably not too much. Like this ends up here saying, American courts are reluctant to break up successful companies. Like I said before, there are services that Google provides that are free because they can subsidize them because they have such a massive company. And that would be bad for people, right? If you had to pay to use email, all of a sudden you have more problems than, just letting Google run it for free. But what will be the outcome most likely is like here, behavioral remedies are more likely than move to carve up Google into new pieces. I do think that there will probably be maybe some sort of fine. Maybe they have to not be allowed to be the default search engine or pay people to be default search engines. Maybe it'll open up to people decide whether or not they want to use Google or Bing, Yahoo, DuckDuckGo, whatever you want to use. You might be able to just pick when you set up the phone, which I don't think is a big deal. By all means, if people want to do that, use whatever search engine you want. You should be able to use whatever you want. This really affects companies like Apple and these companies that take a bunch of money from Google to just allow Google to be the default search engine. Now, if they aren't allowed to do that, they lose a massive and steady revenue source. So that's the bigger problem here for these companies is if they say they can't do that anymore, billions of dollars are coming off the table, and Apple might actually go and make their own search engine. Who knows, to try and replace that or try and make their own type of place going on here. Who knows, right? It's a possibility. And in that case, if you have more competition, that'll make everyone have to be better, and that will lead to a better product for everyone at the end. So that'll be a good thing. But all these other companies, maybe that are depending strictly on this Google being default search engine revenue, they might be the ones in real trouble. But this is it. Google is officially a monopoly. What will they do with that? Yet to be seen. It'll probably be years before anything happens, but I doubt that they break up Google. I just don't see that happening. That's going to do it for this video. As always, remember to smash the button and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in my next video.